Hi everyone, welcome to the First Time Travelers webinar. My name is Eric Izaguirre. I'm an International Programs Advisor with the International Education Office at UCLA. Anna, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Ana Arellano and I oversee the summer physics programs at the International Education Office.
So what we'll be discussing today is a variety of different topics related to travel and being able to navigate travel like a seasoned traveler. So what we're going to be talking about are some things around travel documents, finding and booking flights, luggage and packing, currency exchange, navigating airports, customs and border protection, jet lag, adjusting to life and culture, as well as this notion of American identity abroad, or being someone who comes from the US and going abroad and what that's like. This presentation includes our knowledge of travel pre-COVID, and we acknowledge that these are unusual times. And when it comes to travel, there may be additional considerations or precautions that may now be required or are not mentioned here. This presentation is a starting point as the impacts of COVID on travel are still developing. And also we have compiled a resource sheet that has a lot of the information that we're referencing throughout the presentation. It's a quick one-pager, and you will find that linked in the session description when the recording is posted, but I will also drop it now in the chat for the folks who are joining us live.
So before we begin, we're curious just to see what your experience is with traveling. And for that, we have a short poll and we'll take about a minute or so just to have you share your responses. So what is your travel experience? Okay, so our poll results show that we have participants who have participated or have traveled to one other country, and that's great. But we also want to provide hopefully some information that you have not been aware of when you did travel to that one other country, and hopefully you do find this presentation helpful. So when it comes to travel, there are specific documents that passengers will need to be able to successfully make it to the destination. And these documents include a real ID, passport, visa, and/or a residence permit. So a real ID provides US citizens with access to federal facilities, and this includes an airplane for travel. The expiration of a real ID depends on your home state, and they're generally looking into a similar length to a state driver's license or a state ID. A passport certifies your identity and citizenship and allows you to travel to and from foreign countries. A passport is generally valid for up to 10 years. And a visa allows non-citizens of a country to legally enter and reside in a foreign country for a specific amount of time. There are many types of visas, including tourist visas, students, work, and volunteer visas. And the validity of a visa depends on the country you are traveling to, as well as the type of visa you are obtaining. Finally, we have a residence permit, and a residence permit allows non-citizens to reside in the country also for a specific amount of time. Depending where you are traveling to and for what purpose, this determines the length of validity for the residence permit. And while a visa and residence permit may sound similar, a visa provides your immigration status when you are outside of the country of destination, and a permit provides your immigration status while you are physically in the foreign country. And a permit is typically for those who reside in the country for a much longer time. Which document you will need depends on where you are traveling to and for how long. If you're planning to travel outside the US, a passport is required. If your study abroad program requires a residence permit or a visa, you will be provided with more information once you have been accepted into the study abroad program. If you plan to travel around the US via airplane, a state ID or a driver's license will suffice. Although beginning October 1st, 2021, a real ID will be required for all domestic travel, and a state ID or driver's license will no longer be allowed. If you like to travel domestically, passengers can alternatively decide to use a passport instead, though this is not required. To obtain a real ID, you will need to show proof of identity. This includes proof of your full legal name and your date of birth. You will also need to have your social security card and 2 proofs of residency. Once you've gathered this information, you can visit dhs.gov/realid to complete the online application. Once you complete the application, you will be given a confirmation code. With this code, you can visit a DMV office and obtain your real ID. Typically, it takes 2 to 6 weeks to process and or receive your real ID. To obtain a passport, you will need the passport application form, which you can obtain by visiting travel.state.gov, and proof of your citizenship, proof of identity, 2 headshots, and your social security card. Once you've gathered these documents, you can visit travel.state.gov to schedule an appointment with your nearest passport agency. Processing time for a passport is generally 6 to 8 weeks, though there is an expedited option where you can obtain a passport at a much quicker time for an additional fee. If you are considering studying abroad and need to apply or renew a passport, we'd encourage you to get started on that process now, as U.S. passport processing is backlogged, and we expect processing times to be longer than the usual 6 to 8 weeks. If you've never applied for a passport and this will be your first time, it may be possible to receive an application grant of up to $145. To qualify, you must be participating in a UCEAP program. For more information on this available grant, please contact IEO advisor Robert Rodriguez, and his email will also be provided on the resource handout that Eric provided in the chat, and will be provided on the description on the Globe On Demand website.
So for finding and booking flights, some information that we have to share relates to search engines. So when searching for flights, we recommend that you use search engines that compare flights across multiple airlines at once. This makes it much easier for you to find the best deals and more options for your intended date and time. Kayak and Google Flights are examples of this, but also consider checking out something like Student Universe or just any airline that you're looking at to see if they offer a discount for student travelers. Again, Student Universe is a specific example, but there might be others out there. So consider that while you're looking. And our top 5 tips for booking flights. So if you're applying to a study abroad program, do not book your flight until you receive approval from program staff. The program dates are subject to change, so it's always best to check before you end up booking. And then see if the airline offers changeable or flexible tickets, meaning that you can change the dates after purchasing, and you know that what their refund policies are if your plans do change. The third tip is to pay attention to layovers before purchasing. For those that do not know, layovers are the amount of time in between 2 flights. For example, if you're flying from LA to Tokyo, but you stop in Hawaii for 10 hours, Hawaii is your layover. Sometimes a ticket is cheaper because you're stuck at an airport for 18+ hours, so always pay attention to what that layover will actually entail for you. And then our 4th tip is to check which amenities are included in your flight. Do you receive meals? Are there in-flight entertainment like Wi-Fi, movies, or TV shows? Do you have certain luggage allowances? Consider these things before you book so you understand what's included in the price of your ticket. And then the last tip that we have is to think about your arrival time and what makes sense for you, whether it's the early morning, the middle of the day, or the middle of the night. Will you arrive at a time when there's a lot of people out, shops are open, and you can easily access transportation? Or if you're arriving late at night, is safety or access to basic needs a concern? Always consider this when you're looking at your different flight options.
So there are 3 general types of luggage that a passenger can take with them to their final destination. These are known as a personal item, a carry-on, and a checked baggage. A personal item can be considered a backpack, a purse, or a briefcase. Personal items do have a size restriction as they must fit underneath the seat in front of you. A carry-on can be a small suitcase or a duffel bag. It also has size restrictions as it must fit in the airplane's overhead bins. And an overhead bins, they're located above the passenger seats on the aircraft. Checked baggage can be a medium to large suitcase. It is restricted to a weight of 50 pounds, and these are stored on the aircraft, and you do not have access to these checked baggages during your flight. When traveling with liquids and or gels, there are specific protocols. If you wish to travel with liquids or gels in a carry-on, the containers for these items must be 3.4 ounces or less, and all containers must fit in a quart-sized bag. Items surpassing this amount can be thrown away or simply not allowed to pass. Quart-sized bags with liquids and gels are also known as toiletry bags, and you can find these bags and empty containers in stores such as Target, CVS, or Walgreens. If you plan to travel with liquids or gels that are larger than 3.4 ounces, you can include them in your checked bags. If you plan to do so, I personally recommend storing these items inside a bag or a container, and this is simply to avoid any spills in your belongings, as the pressure and altitude in the airplane can cause these containers to explode or pop open, and you do not want your items in your baggage to be covered in liquid or gel.
So now we're going to talk about currency exchange, but I have a quick question for everyone. How many of you have used currency that is not the US dollar? Let us know by saying yes or no in the chat. Okay, seeing a couple of answers come in. So for those of you who had said yes, what was that experience like for you? Was it confusing? Was it easy? What was the experience like? If you could use one or two words to describe it, summarize it, what was that experience like using foreign currency? Okay, so we're seeing a response around it being confusing to remember the exchange rate when buying things. So we're actually going to do a little activity that will hopefully help folks who are going to be navigating this. So thank you for sharing that. When it comes to exchange rates, so how much of one currency you can exchange for another, that's what an exchange rate is. So you have, for example, the US dollar to Mexican peso. The value of the currency varies, and in some places, the US dollars get you more, and in others, less. A resource that we have that's also included on the resource handout is a link to xe.com. They actually have an exchange rate calculator that can let you know what that looks like per country and per currency. The example that I have here is going from 1 US dollar to Japanese yen. So you can see, and this is just a screen capture from xe.com. You can see that 1 US dollar converts to 104 roughly Japanese yen. But if I've never been to Japan before, what does that actually mean? Is everything super expensive because it's a big number like 104? That's not necessarily true. What it means is that for every 104 yen that you spend while in Japan, you are actually just spending 1 US dollar. So now I have a little exchange rate quiz, and I'll launch that in the poll really quickly. You should see the poll now saying that you're in Tokyo, Japan, and need to buy a bottle of water. A local store is selling it for 104 yen, so how much does that cost in US dollars? This is meant to be a little simpler one. Okay, we'll give it just a few more seconds. All right. So the correct answer for this one is $1, because again, a 104 yen water bottle is equal to $1. The exchange rate is roughly $1 to 104 yen. So I'm going to launch a second one that might require a little bit more thinking. You and some friends decide to explore Tokyo's main shopping district. In one store, you see a shirt that you want, and it costs 1,248 yen. How much does that cost you in US dollars? So this one's a little bit trickier, but that kind of represents what someone was talking about in the past saying, or in the chat saying, it can be tricky to keep track of the expenses. All right. So the answer for this one was $12, because if you think about 1,248 and every dollar essentially being 104, you would just divide the cost of the item by the exchange rate of 104 to get the number of dollars. And in this case, it is $12 for that shirt. So this represents some of the tricky things that can be involved when it comes to using foreign currency. But if you start with understanding the exchange rate and kind of keep that in mind as you're exploring prices, it doesn't mean you're spending thousands of dollars on that shirt. It means that whatever the price is, you're dividing by that exchange rate. And when it comes to where you can actually get currency, so you can do this at ATMs in a foreign country. You can find an ATM where they will distribute the local currency. It's fairly quick and easy, though a con of using this is that they can charge higher fees. And it would require a credit or debit card in order to utilize this. The second option is your bank or credit union. So whoever you're banking with currently, or if you have a credit union that you're a part of, you can order cash in advance before you depart and have it ready for you before you're even going abroad, getting on a plane. So this is a really nice way to do things in advance. And it can take away some of the stress once you arrive. You don't have to suddenly find the local currency, you already have it. A con of this is that it takes time and planning, so it's definitely not something for our last minute planners. And the last place where you can exchange currency, there are actually specialized businesses that deal exclusively in exchanging currency, one for the other. And you can often find these conveniently located in travel hubs like airports. So that makes it really nice. It's a convenient option. However, because you're sort of at that point in an airport, you're a captive audience in need of the local currency. So they tend to charge some of the higher fees and have some of the worst exchange rates. So if you can avoid that, definitely recommend it. Opt for a different option. Definitely recommend trying to have it in advance before you travel. And for now, we're going to take a quick moment to announce the word of the day. So as part of the Global Learning Opportunities Week, we are hosting a virtual scavenger hunt using keywords. Today's word is cenote. So please visit the ieo.ucla.edu/glow website and submit the keyword on our scavenger hunt form by 11:59 p.m. tonight to be entered to win the day's prize, which today is a $75 AS UCLA gift card. Winners will be announced the following day and contacted via email provided. So we'll leave this up for a few more seconds. Make sure you capture this word, and then later go to the IEO website for Glow and enter it to have a chance to win this $75 gift card. Now we'll talk about navigating airports. The day of your flight will involve navigating a multi-step process, which often begins before you even arrive at the airport. There's checking in, there's security screenings, arriving at the boarding gate, and boarding your actual flight. Today, we're just going to be talking about two main steps, checking in and security screening, and our tips for navigating them like a seasoned traveler. So step one is to check in. Checking in confirms that you're present for your flight. You're there, you're going to be there. It can be done online at home to save time while you're at the airport, so you don't have to really bother with checking in once you're on site. And you typically can do it 24 hours before the flight. And a tip that we have for you all is that the week leading up to your flight, check your email for any flight updates or changes, because that can impact your check-in. And also, to save time, set up text alerts to your phone or download the airline's app if they have one available, because many airlines do have an app that makes it much easier to do the check-in. And then some last tips is to give yourself plenty of time. More is always better than less when getting to the airport for your flight. The airline recommends that you arrive 3 hours before your international flight is scheduled to depart, as arriving too late can prevent you from checking bags. And then note that the airport is divided into sections based on airline. So when you're navigating it, getting there, whoever's dropping you off, make sure you're in the appropriate section of the airport to make sure you have an efficient path to your boarding gate. This next section will focus on the second piece. So after you go through checking in, checking any bags, you proceed to the security screening. And this is where you will meet the TSA agents. So TSA stands for Transportation Security Administration, and it's a federal government agency with authority over the traveling public. So what to expect once you get there? The TSA agents are not there to be your friend. I've had some really pleasant encounters with TSA agents, but for the most part, they're really there to get everyone through security as efficiently as possible. So if they're not making small talk, if they're not returning your smile, don't take it personally if they seem rude or annoyed. There's a lot going on in the security screening. Also, second point, everyone's a hot mess going through security, especially if it's super early in the morning or late at night. You're going to be asked to remove your shoes, jackets, hats, metal, and empty your pockets several times, and you will forget to do something a TSA agent asked because it can feel overwhelming, and that's okay. Everyone is going through it. It's a big mess. You and your belongings go through X-ray screenings. And also, you cannot have filled water bottles or drinks with you, though if you have something, so I tend to have a full water bottle and then I have to drink it before I go through security because they won't let me take it with me. And then once it's empty, I go through security and fill it on the other side. And then the TSA has a list of all restricted items, and that is linked in the resource sheet that we're providing. So our last tips around security and how to navigate it. Again, plan ahead for those liquid allowances covered earlier in this workshop. Have items like a laptop, tablet, toiletry bags, or snacks, whatever's applicable, accessible on the top of your bags, like at the top where you've packed it, as opposed to packing them underneath all of these other things, because usually they cannot stay in your bags while at the security checkpoint. You have to remove them. So keep them easily accessible. And then the section on how to dress, it's not about what you're prohibited from wearing, but rather recommendations to help you save time, effort, and stress going through security. Most airports will have signs about what you need to remove, and it may differ depending on location and country. But based on experience, these are some tips that we have. Wear shoes that can easily slip on or off, and avoid ones that lace up and down, as those can take longer to remove and put back on and will add time to your security screening. If you can, don't wear belts or jewelry or watches. You'll have to take them off anyway, so if you're wearing them, keep them packed away before you get to security. You can put them on later. And similar to shoes, jackets that zip on or off are much easier to have instead of those that you would have to like pull over your head like a hoodie. Often jackets need to come off in security, and I don't know about y'all, but hoodies have the habit of taking my shirt off with it, and that's not a situation I'm trying to be in when I'm in public. And then the last thing is hats and beanies. They can seem fairly simple enough, just take it on or off. But if you deal with things like hat hair, that I know that's my situation. Sometimes if I'm wearing a hat and I have to take it off in a public space, it can be a little embarrassing because my hair can be quite unruly. So maybe consider styling your hair before the airport if you can, and if you care about that kind of thing. Otherwise, hats and beanies typically are going to be fine. And then two last things, actually. So The National Center for Trans Equality provides travelers who are transgender with a comprehensive guide on navigating airport security. They have things around ID documents and gender presentation, airport and body scanners and how to navigate that as a trans person, body pat downs, and knowing and exercising your rights. And then for travelers with disabilities, TSA provides a notification card, an example shown here, and also linked on our resource sheet. They provide a card for individuals to privately disclose disabilities or medical conditions while going through the security screening process. So if something might come up during that process for you, and this is applicable, definitely consider checking this out on our resource sheet.
So when you're arriving to a foreign country, passengers will need to clear immigration, and this is also known as customs. Here, you will need to complete a customs declaration, and this lets the country officials and the custom officers know things like who you are, what you're bringing into this country, where you will be staying, and your most recent trip before you arrived at your destination. When you are clearing customs, passengers will also speak with the custom officers who will review your travel documents and ensure you are legally allowed to reside or enter the country. They will ask questions as deemed necessary, and these include why are you here, how long are you expected to be here, where will you stay. Keep in mind, just as Eric mentioned earlier, they are not there to be your friend, to make a conversation. They are there to ensure the safety of yourself, of others, and of the country. Custom officers may also stamp your passport and take your fingerprints or your picture. You will clear customs when arriving at a foreign country and when returning to the US. If you are traveling within the US, you will not clear immigration when arriving at a different state. After you clear immigration, you will follow signs for baggage claim if you checked any baggage, or the exit sign if you did not. Checked baggage will be located on carousels. If before leaving the plane, the carousel number is not announced on the aircraft, you can check the carousel screen, search for your flight number, and identify the carousel where your belongings will be. Before exiting baggage claim, know that second level inspection can occur. Second level inspections entails officers being near the baggage claim and simply stopping you in random to go through your belongings. And this is done just for an extra level of precaution and for security.
Right, now we're going to talk about jet lag very briefly. So what is jet lag? If you haven't heard of it before, it's a side effect of traveling across time zones that affects everyone differently. Some symptoms of it include feeling exhausted, indigestion and loss of appetite, or having concentration and memory issues, which can be really difficult to navigate, especially if you've arrived in a place where maybe you don't speak the local language and you don't quite know exactly where to go, how to navigate public transportation. It can be a lot. So how do you prepare or adjust for jet lag in that case? Well, when it comes to when you arrive, think of options to arrive in daylight if possible. That can help you adjust better to the local time zone of your host country, your host city. And then stay hydrated before, during, and after flight. And although this is very important, on an equal note to that is avoiding alcohol and caffeine. You might think, particularly with caffeine, oh, that will help me get through jet lag. It can actually make it worse. So make sure you're staying hydrated with water, juice, things that don't have caffeine or alcohol in them. And then start adjusting your schedule to the new time zone before departure. So if you know that, around there's like a 5 or 6, 7 hour time difference, think about the little things that you can start doing to adjust your schedule, whether it might be going to bed sooner, going to bed later, eating at different times. What things can you start getting your body used to help cut down on the amount of time that you'll need to adjust once you're on site? And then exercise and stay active. You're in a new place, go explore, go check things out, go get around and see what there is to see, especially if you're arriving in daylight. Because I know from my own experiences, sometimes when I arrive after a long flight, I just want to take a nap. I want to go to where I'm going to go and get in bed, and that's all I want to do. But really fight that urge, because that's feeding into the jet lag and it will further delay the amount of time it'll take for you to adjust to the local time.
So when we think of traveling, we tend to associate it as an adventure and as something positive. And though most of the time it can't be, there may be times where we experience culture shock and it may not seem as positive. Culture shock is the feeling or experience of disorientation or discomfort when you are in an unfamiliar setting or an environment. This does not happen to everyone, but it can occur when you're traveling, for example, from LA to New York or LA to Spain. The 4 stages of culture shock are: 1, the honeymoon stage. Here, the culture is new, it's exciting, you associate everything with positivity, and you are having an amazing time. The second stage is crisis, where the realities of your new life, such as your different housing accommodations, the different type of food, you're missing your family and friends, all of this can become overwhelming. Reality starts to kick in, and you start to notice more and more negative aspects of the host culture, of your host city and your host country. In the third stage of recovery, you will start to hang out more and more with the people from your country or your city in an attempt to belong. You are opening up to more things more slowly. You're starting to get the hang of the new culture and this new environment. And finally, in the adjustment stage, you will start to feel more connected to your host country and eventually feel like you're starting to fit in. You will feel more comfortable and you would have adjusted to this new way of life. And sometimes culture shock is only associated with going abroad, but culture shock can also happen once you return back home and you have to readjust to life in the US or life in LA. This actually happened to me when I went abroad for the first time. I had a wonderful time. I didn't miss home or my friends. I was taking it all in day by day and having a great time. But once I returned home, I felt like I didn't belong and I missed being in my host culture and in that environment. I didn't know why I was feeling sad or angry of being home because it is home. But because of this, I didn't know at that time this was culture shock. This was reverse culture shock. And culture shock can cause you to feel frustrated, the sense of fear, or even depression. And this all can be normal. We all need to adapt to an unfamiliar setting, and sometimes a little bit more than others, such as myself. So to help you best prepare for your time abroad or in a different environment, we do have a few tips, though you may find different alternatives as well. First, you want to find your support group. Keep in mind that you may not be the only one in this different environment, and there may be others who may be sharing the same feeling that you are. Meeting new people, making friends, and socializing are great to feel supported, to feel accompanied, and to feel safe in this new environment. You shouldn't have to experience it alone if you don't wish to, of course. Additionally, finding your support group can also mean creating a communication plan with your friends and your family back home. They don't need to be by your side to still lend you that support. Second, we encourage you to ask questions. You are in a new environment with different groups of people who have different beliefs, different actions, different foods or music. Use this time to learn more about others and their environment. Expand your global education and your understanding. Asking questions can also be a good tool to use while you are in a different classroom setting. There are different cultural differences in the academic setting, so use this as a good time to just ask questions and learn a little bit more. When you are receiving responses to these questions, keep an open mind. People of this city or this country may not think or act the same way that you do, and it's important to not jump into conclusions or voice your opinion right away. When you are in a different culture, you are stepping out of your comfort zone, and it's important to let other ideas or other perspectives that you wouldn't otherwise hear or see in the US or in LA just come into perspective. Or if you want to set goals. You went abroad for a reason, but what else can you gain from this experience? Goals don't have to be long-term. For example, a goal I set for myself when I was abroad was every week when I went grocery shopping, I would try something new snacks, new frozen food, new drinks, some things I enjoyed and some things I was not a fan of, but this helped further enjoy my experience and just learn a little bit more about my culture. Finally, be patient. Not only will you need to wait for a flight or wait for a train for your next travel adventure, but patience is needed to adapt and to learn in this new environment. You are not expected to make friends or learn a new language instantly. Just sit back and enjoy your time abroad. Take it all in day by day.
All right, so last thing that I'll be sharing is this notion of Americans abroad. And one thing, we have a little activity and you can engage through the chat, is what are some common stereotypes of people from the USA? What does that look like? Feel free to throw it out there through the chat. What's the first things that come to mind when you think of stereotypes of people in America or from America? And I'm also noticing some questions coming in. That's great. Thank you for asking questions. As a reminder, we will get to them right after we finish with the content of the presentation, but we will get to your questions. All right, so I'm seeing a theme of loud. I'm seeing some entitled, unwilling to learn the culture, unwilling to learn the language, or refusing to learn the language. And yeah, deferring to just speaking in English and rather than making an effort. Yeah. So those are definitely some of the stereotypes. And on the same note, where do you think these stereotypes come from? Feel free to put that in the chat as well. So yeah, thank you for participating in that. So yeah, it's a mix. It can be movies, it can be the news and what they see. A lot of the times, especially from speaking from my own experience, when I'm abroad, a lot of the times people are seeing our news. They're seeing what's going on in the U.S. And so some of it's based on the news and what's getting reported while abroad. But a lot of it is movies. It can be Hollywood, and that can give a very skewed picture of what it means to be American. Though I will say that some of the stereotypes can be very true. I know I've experienced that in programs where I've been with other students from the US. Unfortunately, there are folks who do fulfill those stereotypes, and it's coming from somewhere. So it's common for people who travel internationally from the US to be met with these questions, comments, and opinions about their home country. Most are informed by US foreign policy or politics, as well as US pop culture. And they can range from playful jokes to strong anti-American sentiment. It is common for people who travel with a US passport to be viewed as Americans first, which may be different from how you view yourself while at home in the US. Here you may have other identities that you think of about constantly, like your race, religion, gender, class, etc. However, when you go abroad, you're in a new context and suddenly you might be viewed as just an American and your other identities aren't as present in that moment, which can feel really strange. And you might then be primarily asked to speak to all things American, whatever that means, and may force you to look at yourself and your identities differently. Also, if you're a student of color, you may get questions about whether or not you truly are from America. I know this has happened to many of my friends as I've traveled, and one of the stereotypes out there is that people from the US are white. That is a stereotype out there that many countries have about people from the US. And you may encounter people who may not think you are American, which can be upsetting. And I also acknowledge that these are also experiences that people of color get while here in the US, but it's also something that can be experienced while abroad. So what do you do when you encounter these opinions and stereotypes? How can you prepare for these types of experiences that you might face abroad? Well, one of the things you can do is to come prepared to discuss US culture, the politics, and the history with host country nationals, wherever it is that you decide to go. Do your research, especially about the host country's relationship with the US. Many countries around the world, as I had mentioned, follow US politics closely, and it is common for host country nationals to want to engage in conversation and even debate about the US. When confronted by stereotypes, think about how to respond in a thoughtful, respectful way that opens up a dialogue about sharing cultures. Perhaps the person has never met someone from the US before, and you're sort of a cultural ambassador. What does that mean, and what does that look like for you? I know that there have been many myths that I've had to dispel, many stereotypes, and many realities in my own travels. So it's always an enriching conversation, though it can be uncomfortable and at times frustrating. With that, that actually concludes the content that we'll be sharing. And now we can open it up for any questions that folks have through the Q&A tool. Let's see. We have a question asking if the recordings can be watched again. for, if you missed something in the beginning. Yes, absolutely. This is currently being recorded and it will be posted within a day or two on the ieo.ucla.edu/glow website. And someone saying they forgot the keyword. Yes, I will put that in the chat. And for folks who may have missed this as well, I will also put the link to the resource guide that we created for this presentation. So that has a link to the TSA list of restricted items. It has lists to flight search engines. It has links to other TSA travel related resources that we've mentioned throughout the presentation. So definitely keep a copy of that for yourselves. And we'll give it a little more time for any additional questions.
Okay, so if you have any other Q&A, any questions, please feel free to still drop them in the Q&A section on Zoom. If you are interested, you can also scan the QR code that you see on screen to receive further study abroad program updates, or you can access it through the bit.ly as well. So bit.ly/UCLA IEO list. And that's the one way to access our email newsletter, once again, for more study abroad program updates. And if you have any other questions, please email our general inbox at info@ieo.ucla.edu or join our virtual drop-in advising. We are available Monday through Thursday. If you would like to address any specific questions to Eric or myself, you can reach us at the emails indicated on the screen as well. But we'd like to thank you all for your time today. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.